Well, the Conservative privilege motion that has tied up the House for months now was briefly put on pause today to allow the official opposition to move ahead with a motion of non-confidence. But instead of just singling out the governing Liberals, the Conservatives also used the motion to put pressure on the NDP, a party that continues to say it will not vote the government out, at least not yet, despite expressing lost confidence in the Liberals when New Democrats ended their supply and confidence agreement.
The House agrees with the NDP leader, and the House proclaims it has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. We all applaud the NDP leader. I know that he is enjoying the praise we're giving him.
But instead of bowing to the Conservative pressure, New Democrats took advantage of the situation today and were able to put a debate on reproductive rights on the agenda as well, asking the House to vote on a woman's right to choose.
We are also seeing real barriers to access to reproductive and sexual health care here in Canada, and this is unacceptable. Because, Madam Speaker, women's health care is a right, and women's lives matter.
Well, let's bring in our political panel right now. Susan Smith is a former Liberal strategist, co-founder and principal of Blue Sky Strategy Group. Josie Sabatino, Director of Communications, former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, now Senior Consultant with Summa Strategies. And George Soule is the former Director of Communications for the NDP, now Principal at Syntax Strategic. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Okay, so here you have this motion of confidence. And as I said, not just the Liberals government being put on this paper, but also the NDP. But the NDP does this move on reproductive rights. Did the Conservative attempt here to shame Jagmeet Singh backfire?
Well, I think for sure. I mean, to start off with, he quoted quite a bit of what Jagmeet said. He missed the part where he pointed out that that Pierre Poilievre is a billionaire bootlicker. So that part of the quote seemed to get missed somehow by Mr. Poilievre in the House, and I think it did backfire. I think it shows also that they're just playing games in the House. I mean, there's definitely room and a need to investigate the Liberal scandals, but holding the entire House hostage means that the work of the people isn't getting done. So, and when the Conservatives did finally allow it, or agree to let it open up to do to have business done, they moved immediately to a motion to shut the whole thing down again, effectively. So I think it proves that they're not actually interested in getting anything done for Canadians, especially right now at a time when we need to be figuring things out with Donald Trump coming into office. And it shows that they're not really serious about really looking into the Liberals either. They're just too busy measuring the curtains, really, in the PMO.
Mm-hmm. Bootlegger might have been more fun. But anyways, Josie, what do you make it? Did this Conservative motion backfire?
I don't think so. I mean, they call it a wedge for a reason. And at the end of the day, I think we're seeing Pierre Poilievre's prowess here when he puts motions on the table like this that cause a real wedge for the NDP. And at the end of this day, Mr. Singh is going to support Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. He is not standing up for the workers that he claims to be on side with. And I think voters are going to see through that. Unions are going to see through that. And I think he's going to pay the political price for this. Yeah, but at the same time, though, with this vote, the NDP are trying to point out the wedge or the difference between some Conservatives and New Democrats, what they stand for. Susan, what do you make of the motion and what the NDP did today?
I'm amused, more than amused, at the word prowess attached to Pierre Poilievre, but that's maybe another comment. House shenanigans are going to just be seen in a big House shenanigans bucket by Canadians. I think, George, you have a good point. The business of the House is not taking place in terms of the important things that Canadians want our legislators to be doing. Smart move to try and use Mr. Singh's words against him, but he doesn't want an election, so you can pretty much say anything these days, I think, and Jagmeet Singh will side with the government because he doesn't want to have an election. But a clever move on the part of Mr. Singh to make the Conservatives stand and vote against something that clearly many in their caucus are uncomfortable with and is in fact an issue, a wedge issue for them with both Liberals, that can benefit both Liberals and NDP depending on where people are. So I think Canadians have tuned out the House of Commons at the moment. It hasn't really done anything in the last 8 weeks except past the GST holiday where there was a brief pause. So I think they all need to be a little bit careful and get down to doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah, okay. Well, in terms of getting down to what needs to be done, I also want to get your thoughts, because we haven't really gathered here since Justin Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Donald Trump. You mentioned Donald Trump, how it was going to be a big challenge for this country. And here you have the Prime Minister going down, and despite making assurances around the border, despite making assurances about upping security, there's still no declaration that Donald Trump will not go ahead with this 25% tariff against Canadian goods. So was this visit in Mar-a-Lago a win or a lose for the Prime Minister, do you think, George?
Look, I mean, I think it was a move that he had to make, and so I think it was worthwhile to take a shot. I think it also exposed some possible divisions within the Liberals. So, there's lots of questions about why the Deputy Prime Minister didn't go down, and I think now that those questions now exist that wouldn't have existed otherwise. I also, it's interesting that Donald Trump wants us to have tougher border security rules, but we'd actually have to make them more lax to allow him as a convicted felon into Canada. So some people are saying Trudeau stooped to go down to Mar-a-Lago, but Donald Trump's not actually allowed in Canada, so he had to go down across the border. I think it was worth a shot. I mean, I'm not going to, again, I think there's more effective ways to do it. I think one of the things that has come out recently is, almost immediately after having a meeting with the premiers and saying that we need a Team Canada unified approach, without telling the premiers, Justin Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago, right? So I think it's important if we're going to try to bring the team together to actually have a team approach, and it looks like Trudeau's not doing that. So that's a problem.
Okay, I heard both chuckles and a deep sigh from Susan here.
I've actually thought about this. Look, Mr. Trump is going to impose tariffs on January 20th, and there's no way, and he said he's going to do it on his first day in office. So the government of Canada, led by Prime Minister Trudeau, has to pull out whatever stops it can that's reasonable to protect the country from that kind of thing. And that means going down and talking to Mr. Trump if they can get some face-to-face time. Trump is a relationship guy. This was an informal conversation, and he brought Dominic LeBlanc, who's our border minister and our intergovernmental affairs minister, down. If he had brought Minister Freeland or if he had brought Minister Ng, it would have been a trade discussion, and that would have almost been a concession that the tariffs were going to come in. By bringing the border guy, you're immediately addressing, or at least making a move to address, what Trump wants to talk about. Back to what I said, Trump is a relationship guy. It's important to open those doors. There were other people there. Those relationships can start. What I think it's also important to know is Canada's going to get whacked with something on January 20th. Anybody who says on January 20th or January 21st that Justin Trudeau failed because we still got hit by tariffs, that's pure politicking. Trump has to do something. That's the way he rolls. But if Mr. Trudeau's presence at Mar-a-Lago started the conversations and paths, maybe our refined petroleum products don't get whacked. Maybe that's the gas that supplies all the eastern seaboard and other places. Maybe forestry is another issue, but there are so many things that go back and forth. And maybe that conversation and a reasonable tone getting things started will yield a difference. We won't know. He will not have erased everything that's possible to happen, but you can imagine it would have been a heck of a lot worse if those kinds of conversations hadn't started or hadn't been taking place.
Yeah, and we don't know what Donald Trump's going to do, right? Like during the election, it was 10%. Afterwards, it was 25%. It could be sectoral. It could be wide range. What do you make of the visit? Win or lose, do you think?
Listen, I agree that he had to go down there. There was no circumstance where he didn't go. The problem is, I think if you're an average Canadian looking at the situation, you're seeing Justin Trudeau go down on a Friday night. Nobody knows about it. It is the cloak of darkness. These pictures leak in the morning. There's somebody photobombing them. They're around a dinner table. It just does not look serious. And then you watch these strategic leaks happen in the media, all on Donald Trump's terms in U.S. media, making jokes about the 51st state and this social media declaration, again, these images coming out. So I just don't think that we look like we are in a position of strength. And the problem is this has ramifications for our economy. If businesses are looking to invest here, they're looking at the broader scenario and they're thinking, there is a lot of uncertainty in this equation right now.
Okay, I need a quick answer from all of you, and I know you want to jump in, but I need a quick answer before we're done here, because you talk about economic ramifications. I'm wondering about political ramifications here. Now that Donald Trump is going to be sworn in, will that have an impact on who Canadians want to see as Prime Minister and which party as government? George?
Well, I think people will argue either way. I mean, there's the argument that we need the opposite here. Others are going to say, oh, Pierre Poilievre is going to get along better. I do think that it leads back to the original conversation, which is why it was so important for the NDP to bring forward the question of choice and put it on the table and have the Conservatives be clear on that, because it's a question that Donald Trump has demonstrated can be revoked. Like, those rights can be revoked in the United States. Access isn't as perfect here either. And so if Poilievre is likely going to become the next prime minister after the next election, and that's how it's looking, I think what the NDP is trying to do is say, well, at least be honest with Canadians about where your party stands on things. So that's important.
Okay, Susan, do you think an impact?
I think it might impact the speed at which we go to the polls to make that kind of decision. I think Canadians may not be in a mad rush to get to the polls if Trump is firing off in all directions. I think they will probably like some steady hands at the tiller. So what I think might happen is where I used to think we'd end up at the polls in the spring, beginning of summer, I now think we might go all the way to the end.
Okay, Josie?
I'm looking at the situation in Parliament, and I'm thinking, if we can't even get our own house in order here in Ottawa, how can we go to the negotiating table and come at it from a position of strength? And I think Canadians see that, and I would argue the reverse. I think that will actually encourage more people to look to the political leaders to go to an election so that they can have some certainty around who is negotiating at that table.
Except Poilievre stepped in it this week with his broken borders press conference. The premiers all walked out, reasonably willing to try a Team Canada approach. And Poilievre came out spouting Trump's lines. That's not what a leader does for his country.
Okay, well, we will see. He's inaugurated January the 20th. Could you imagine? No, January 20.
20, yes.
2020.
We'll get it right.
Okay, we'll get it right. Already thinking of August. Okay. Susan, Josie, George, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.